Hi and welcome to this video where, as you can see, a fair bit of the bumper has been removed. So it's been a bit of a ordeal this week because I just planned to remove the front of the car like I would have done on the first generation, which is no big deal at all. On this it's turned into a bit of a nightmare. Just to get to two bolts on the edges of the bumper, I've had to take the liners out and these two plastic decorative strips that go around the wheel arch, and they're all popped on with little poppers and everything else just to get to these two screws. So anyway, so the outer bumper then was off, the liners have been taken out, and then another nightmare with the bumper carrier because all the screws and fasteners were completely corroded and took a lot of work to try and get them out without snapping them and everything else. So eventually the bumper carrier has come off and I finally got to remove the intercooler for the turbo, which I will then clean out. So basically that's what's in this video, is me getting to this stage and draining any oil out of the intercooler, and then hopefully next week I might be able to actually start to remove the radiator and that, because I would like to try and get to the oil cooler that's just alongside the catalytic converter and DPF. I was actually hoping that I would have got to that today by this stage, but like I said, this one has been a real challenge, and I reserve my opinion on the quality of the second generation of Minis. I think I prefer the first generation. But anyway, so hope you enjoy watching this video, and many thanks for watching this video.
So to remove the bumper is quite a process, and I will start with the centre grille. So here's a quick heads up of the 4 plastic clips at the bottom of that grille. So moving on to the top of the grille, we just need to pull out these 4 plastic rivets. I think that's what they sort of call them. So that's what they look like. It might actually be worth buying some of these sort of plastic items before you start the job, because I think some of them are bound to break. And one thing to watch with this grille is it's very brittle, as I found out. So I actually managed to break this just trying to open the bonnet. That was me trying to put my hand in, trying to find the catch when I first got the car, and managed to break it quite well. So it is very brittle. So then what you've got to do is just poke something down and try and just push those 4 plastic clips over that I showed at the beginning. I noticed one of those is also broken on the left hand side. So they just push in like that, and you don't seem to be able to access that from the front of the car. It seems to be from the top, so you do need to go quite careful. But anyway, so that's the first part of the bumper removed. So now I'm going to remove the wheel arch liners. I'm just going to pop the wheels off. Now obviously this would have been a lot easier had the wheels been on the ground. So what I'm going to try and do is just use a tyre lever here to hold that wheel against the brake caliper while I break those nuts loose. Not ideal, because obviously you do risk causing some damage to the finishing surfaces. But once this wheel comes off, you'll see that that's not really going to be of any concern, because it looks pretty terrible. I've never actually seen rust quite that bad. So we're trying to just tap some of this rust off just to make the caliper look a little bit better. I'm not quite sure why this is so badly rusty, considering it's a 2009 car. But anyway, so here's the wheel arch liners, and we've got 2 Torx 27 screws, and several plastic rivets that need to be pulled out. So here they are circled, and we'll get started on that. So in theory it's a positive screwdriver or posi drive, and just turn, and in theory just pull them out. Doesn't always work quite like that, so you may find that a few of them sort of break, the heads come off. So these are the access panels to the headlights. I'm obviously missing one there, so that's allowed mud to get thrown inside. But anyway, that aside, you'll see the mud in a moment. I also noticed the suspension strut there looks like it's possibly leaking a little bit of oil, which would also be an MOT failure. Definitely looks a little bit damp there around the damper. Right, so we've nearly got all these pop rivets out. So there is a Torx 27 there, and one vertically above near the suspension. Now there is also another pop rivet by the wheel arch at the top there, and if you don't take it out it's likely to rip the lining, as you're going to see in a moment. So it tucks underneath here, so we have got like a plastic sort of panel there to protect the bottom of the car, I presume. We just pull that out. Like I say, be very careful because this tears, as you're going to see, because there's one rivet left.
You're f***ing joking.
And it tears that easily. Bit disappointed with that. Yeah, so up there inside the wheel arch, hiding away, is one more pop rivet. There it is. I must say this was a lot easier on the R50. The liner was at least sort of like quite a sturdy plastic. So I don't know quite why they've gone to this sort of flocked fabric sort of thing. And things aren't looking any better in here either. Subframe's looking a little bit corroded there, along with the horns. Basically anything made of metal. And we've also got some soil in the car as well. So just give that soil a bit of a clean out before it starts growing plants. And that's how it looks. So again, not as impressive as I would like. So on to removing the wheel arch trim. So here's a quick heads up again on all the pop clips and the two plastic rivets that need to be removed. So again, it seems to be quite a challenge to do this. So I'll start here. Now again, on the old R50, this part of the trim actually used to go up with the bonnet. So you never had this sort of issue. So things seem to be made a little bit more awkward on the second generation. Okay, so we get this pop rivet out. And then you've got a bit of a challenge on your hand because you've got to undo 7 clips on the wheel arch. So here we can see 4 of those clips. So you've got to carefully try and squeeze them in and gradually release them all. So it's quite a time-consuming process. When you think this actually used to just lift up whenever you opened the bonnet on the R50. So there we go, that's the wheel arch trim off, and now we have access to the bumper bolt. So those are all the clips, and that's the bolt we needed access to. Again, on the R50 you can access that even with the wheels still on. But anyway, I will now quickly remove the other side. So I'll still include the photos of the trim. This one's actually complete and hasn't been ripped in half. So there we are. We shows you all the different parts there. That one has the 2 lighting access panels. Right then, so we'll just remove it like so. So you can see the 2 lighting panels there. I'll have to give this a bit of a jet wash before I photograph it. Doesn't seem to be keeping the mud out from behind that. And then here's our infamous trim. We've got to wiggle around there to try and get it to unclip. There we go. And we've got access to the second bolt. So finally I can remove the outer bumper. So again, I'll give you some heads up photographs showing where the screws are and what is actually on the back of this outer bumper, because we've got an ambient temperature sensor there and a couple of lights that need to be disconnected. So don't just pull the bumper away, because you could cause some damage. So anyway, so eventually now we can undo those 2 screws with a Torx 25. And then we've also got a couple of screws at the front of the car. Again, that's a Torx 25. So we just do the other side. So thankfully these all came out quite nicely. Now, I was sort of expecting that underneath this would be the aluminium bumper carrier that was on the R50. I had a bit of a shock when I did eventually remove this outer bumper. So you've also got a couple of Torx 25s underneath that are screwed in there, and there's one on the other side. So as you can see, that subframe looks pretty rusty, doesn't it? So the sump is still off and it's just dripping oil onto that metal tray at the moment. So we've got these 3 plastic rivets here. Like I say, it'd probably be worth trying to get hold of some of these plastic rivets just so you've got some spares. I mean, this one was quite tight. I actually used a pair of long nose pliers just to help ease that out, get a grip on it. Okay, so that's the bumper loose now. But like I say, we have got some cables under there we've got to be a bit careful of. So I'll just unclip this side. And then we'll go to the other side. So we've got 2 connections here, one for the light and one for the ambient temperature sensor. Just pop that off. I'll show a close-up of these in a moment. And that's the outer bumper off, revealing a somewhat corroded bumper carrier made of steel instead of aluminium. Okay, so that's the ambient temperature connector, and I'll just zoom in on that just to show you how that unclips. You should be able to just push it down with your finger, or you might need to just pop something under there to help lift it over the clip, like so, or the catch. And then again, this is the lighting one. I'll just show how that fits in. Let's just push in, and again just push in at the back of the connector to unclip it. There we are. So we'll go back and have a look at some of this rust. So it's not looking brilliant, really. I am quite disappointed with that, considering I thought the second generation was a better built car. My allegiance is still with the first generation, I think, at the moment. Alright. So the next job is to try and knock some of this rust off, I think. So I'll just run my Sealy SA661 over this, try and knock some of this rust off. And I'll just pop a photo up to show you what the bumper carrier looked like on the first generation of the Mini, which was quite a nice piece of engineering there. So this seems to be a lot more cost effective on the second generation. I can't imagine this cost a lot of money to make. But anyway, now to remove the inner bumper carrier. Okay, so here is our inner bumper carrier, highlighted in yellow. So So what you need is a 16mm socket for this and a breaker bar. And I've actually speeded this up quite a bit. I'm just going to show me removing one of the bolts. The other three I've actually pre-loosened the previous evening. So this is how I've had to remove each one, is just keep winding it back in and out. Keep spraying it with a bit of lubricants, because it is going to get quite hot as well. And as long as you keep winding it backwards and forwards, they generally come out in the end without any damage. So as you'll see, this would just fly straight out because I've already pre-done that one. So we've got two this side, and then again another two on the other side, which have also been pre-loosened. So that's the crush tubes unbolted from the subframe now. So we can go to the front of the car, just unclip this cable holder, which is for the air conditioning pump. That's the wire going to the pump. And try not to hurt yourself. At least I don't swear. Right, so then we just need to unclip that cable from another little plastic holder. I remember seeing these on the R50 on the bonnet. So they've carried that over. Now there is actually a couple of bolts at the back of this, but I have no chance of undoing those bolts because they're rusty. So it's a Torx 20 and a 13mm socket, deep one, for the bolts and screws at the front. So I'll start with the screws. Now these I had a real challenge trying to get out. It actually broke the bit off one of my drivers because they were so stuck. So what I resorted to was actually heating the body of it with a MAP gas blowtorch, which sort of softened things in the plastic, I think, just slightly, enough for me to undo them without snapping my tools. And then this is the last one. You see a little bit of burning there from where I've had the blowtorch on there. Had to protect the water reservoir bottle, obviously. Didn't want that to melt. So just use one of those plumber's pads to protect that. And then moving on, it's a 13mm socket for these three nuts at the front. Again, these were binding as well, so you may need to sort of try and clean the threads as you undo, to try and prevent them binding and damaging the thread. So we've got three there on each side, like so. And we'll just pop over to the other side. I'd be interested to know if it's just my car is actually the one that's rusty like this, or whether this is actually quite common for a 2009 model. I mean, it literally looks like the car's been driven in the sea. Either that or the quality of the finishing paint and stuff is just unbelievable. Right, so then it's just a case of gently tap it each side, bit by bit, just to work it forwards, because it's obviously being held on with a lot of rust at the moment, which again I've pre-cleared out, because this was actually full of rust as soon as I pulled this out the first time. So the car should be a lot lighter now. And there is the inner bumper carrier, which, as you can see, I'm not actually that impressed with that. It seems pretty flimsy. Yeah, here's some photos of it. So you'll be able to see the corrosion close up, even though I've actually gone over this and tried to clean it. You'll see them on the crush tubes there. There you go. That's quite a bit of perforation there. Right then, So now to remove the turbo intercooler. So here's a photo showing the turbo intercooler just below the air conditioning condenser, and behind that is obviously the normal radiator for the cooling system. So you've got two large rubber pipes on here, and you need a 7mm socket just to undo this banjo. Now this banjo is actually clipped inside the pipe, so it won't just come off. Now the other problem I had was the pipe was literally stuck to the plastic, so whether the heat or something had literally bonded it on there, I'm not sure. So the two front fasteners are Torx 25, and again I had to work at those for quite a while to get them out without damaging them. Now I'm just going to go to the other side because I've had a bit of a struggle on the left side. So I'm going to see if I can remove the right side first, and hopefully that might give me a little bit more leverage to get the other side out. So as this comes out, you may actually get some oil spill onto the ground, because they quite often have a little bit of oil inside these intercoolers from leakage. So you'll see that oil in a moment because it starts to drip on the floor. Okay, so we'll just go back to the other side now. I'll speed this up. It actually took considerable time to try and undo that. And there it is, it's stuck on the pipe. It's literally bonded itself on there. So you can see it's sort of oily inside. And so there's some of the oil that's just dripped out of the actual pipe. So what I'll do is I'll stand this pipe up and just see how much oil's in that intercooler, because obviously we want it to drain out. Now it's also worth putting a couple of rags in these tubes, because obviously you don't want anything getting in there and possibly causing damage if you've got some grit in there, which is what concerns me with my car being quite rusty. Right then, so I'll stand this up and leave it for a couple of days and just see how much oil actually comes out. Hopefully not too much. So there it is, it started to drip. And we'll come back now 2 days later and have another look. So that's the oil that's come out so far after a couple of days in a vertical position. So hopefully this will actually be more effective now at cooling the air with that oil out of it. I'll obviously flush this through as well with some brake cleaner, I think. Right, so there we are then. Okay, and here's some reference photographs. So we start here with the inner lining of the right hand side, and then this was on the left hand side that didn't get torn. So I'm trying to show that top plastic rivet there so you don't make the same mistake I did. And there's our plastic clips holding the trim on, like that. And then onto the front bumper where the Torx screws are. And then a quick look inside that front bumper to see what's going on there and the ambient temperature sensor. And there's the actual towing eye flap there. A close-up of the centre. And those are the plastic clips on the grille, which you don't want to break. And then onto the inner bumper carrier. And some photos showing that inner bumper carrier, just to show all the corrosion, which I'm quite disappointed about. This is actually the newest car I've ever owned, and it's the rustiest. So, bit of a shame that. So there's our turbo intercooler there, and just a view of the inside of the wheel arch, and showing more of the corrosion on all the metal. It does not look good, does it? Yeah. I wonder what the history of this car is.
And I'd just like to end this video by giving my appreciation to Paul Norman, who very kindly gave me a donation. All donations are really appreciated because they do help towards me funding this channel. So thanks a lot for that, Paul, and hope everyone has a good weekend, and many thanks for watching.
So you've been watching removing the bumper and turbo intercooler on a 2009 MINI R56. And thank you for watching, and I hope this video helps you service and maintain your car within your budget. This video was filmed and edited by me, Mark Savage, in March 2022, and I can be found on Instagram and Facebook as Coats and Gators.